Ladies and gentlemen, everybody please put your masks on. Masks are good for your health. They're for your safety, and they protect you against contagious diseases. Unfortunately, masks that protect against the nonsense, stupidity, and insanity have not been invented yet, and those could be very contagious as well. All actors, please form a line to my left to receive your masks. Masks refine your acting. They help your characters reveal their true self. They also help your characters to conceal their true self.
Sweetie, I've got some good news. First, I'm done with my work. I managed to finish the translations.
Finally, we have some good news in this endless lockdown.
Well, if it wasn't for the lockdown, I would never have had the time to have done it.
Dad, what is the book about?
Oh, it's a medieval play written in Latin, and it describes certain events from the 14th century during the times when the Black Death was ravaging the entire world.
Who is it written by?
As with most of the old manuscripts, we don't know. But in the scientific writings, he is referred to as scriptor incertus, which means author uncertain. And only a single 15th century English copy of the manuscript describes his name as W. Blower, the Kingmaker.
W probably means Warwick, the one who was behind all the plots to replace the kings he didn't like.
His name is Warwick, not Warwick. Could be that we'll never know.
Dad, would you read it for me?
Sweetie, we're having our first rehearsal now. So if you want, we can watch it now.
As the wise king wrote in the past, if one seeks the truth, God would see it. And if somebody indulges in lies, God would see it too. People tend to forget this basic truth, and God sees that too. For many years, God's grace has been protecting the people of Aragonica, but they forgot that and went on the wrong path. Fewer people were willing to work the land, and most wished to be lawyers or marketing managers. And many people believed that the most important thing in life is to spend most of your time on Facebook and Instagram. And fewer people were reading, and much more people were writing, mainly in Facebook and Instagram. And people began worshiping idols again, music idols, celebrities, and reality stars. And more people thought that the country's main problem was deciding on how many types of restrooms should there be in public schools. But God sees it all. And finally, he lost patience and decided to remind people that other problems do exist too. And God withdrew his grace and let the evil do its wicked and destructive work. And massive wildfires scorched the earth, and intense droughts destroyed the crops, and a terrible plague epidemic was killing the people, and unprecedented climate change was threatening humankind with extinction. And then the most devastating of all disasters came along. It had been 3 years since the forces of darkness reigned over the kingdom of Aragonica. The country had been suffering under the brutal dictatorship of the evil, greedy, cruel, and corrupt Don Donaldo, the King of Darkness, usurper of the throne of Aragonica. Against him were fighting the forces of good and light, led by Doña Hilaria, the legitimate queen of Aragonica. Doña Hilaria inherited the crown from her husband and former king of Aragonica, Don Guillermo, better known in the old chronicles by his English name, King William, but was unlawfully deprived of her rights by the usurper, Don Donaldo. In this epic struggle, she could rely on many faithful loyalists. The majority of Cortes of Aragonica, also known as Aragonican Parliament, group of people servants working hard to implement the principle, nobody can deliver to the citizens of Aragonica as much as we can promise them. Doña Inés, president of Cortes, key supporter of the cause of Doña Hilaria.
Guys, that's not the right mask.
Oh, sorry.
Guys, that's still not the right mask.
Finally. It's so hard to work with those drunk Russians.
Ultimate Resistance Special Squad, shortly URSS. A group of young female, very progressive social justice warriors fighting the dark side of the Force. Doña Maxine, head of the Committee for Polite Speech and Good Manners at the Cortes of Aragonica. Don Jeremias, head of the Legal Crucifixion Committee of the Cortes of Aragonica. Don Jose, slightly aging man of integrity, former Viceroy of Obamia. El Experto, son of Don Jose, prominent money hunter. Expert on transparency, corporate governance and responsibility, international expansion, and other priorities with special knowledge in the matters of natural gas industry. The Great Inquisitor, from the Latin inquisitio, meaning inquiry, also known in the chronicles under its English names, Chief Investigator or Chairman of the Investigations. Anonymous, honest civil servant providing information about the evil activities of the King of Darkness. The wisest and most experienced lawyer, member of the majority of the Cortes. In their fight against the King of Darkness, the forces of good and light were blessed by the divine look and speech of Saint Greta, a supernatural phenomena revealing the unexpected consequences of alcohol's restrictions in Snowlandian kingdoms. The dark side of the Force was defended by Don Giuliani, main devil's advocate. Counsel Castorius, deputy devil's advocate. Senor Nunez, Senor Jordan, Doña Eliza, and other servile servants of the King of Darkness. Guest appearances in the play by high priestesses and priests of truth, members of the Order of the Service of Truth, and its defense against the forces of darkness. King Joseph, ancient king of Georgia, best known under the name the King of Steel, also called the father of all progressive humankind, because all progressive men and women in the world are his descendants. Without his immortal inspiration, the existence of this whole play would be impossible to imagine.
Your Excellence, what is the reason for the urgent call this late at night?
Doña Inés, I've got some horrible news. We received a letter from our faithful and loyal servant Anonymous. Oh, my lips refuse to pronounce the awful account I read.
What does this brave man or woman, the Anonymous, report?
The King of Darkness, this terrible person, is preparing to take some very terrible actions.
That's nothing new. What is he planning this time?
The King of Darkness is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the next year's elections. That's what the Anonymous is warning us about.
Is he conspiring again with Emperor Vladimir? It is such a pity that Don Roberto couldn't nail him last time. Is he inciting Emperor Vladimir to invade our country with his military during the elections? Oh, it would be a very worrisome imagining how porous our borders are at the moment. Do they plan to bribe the voters? We must urgently consider what we can do to improve our package of free healthcare, free education, free childcare, debt forgiveness, and 1,000 gold coins monthly cash bonus for everyone.
No, it is much worse. He is pressuring a foreign country to investigate one of his main domestic political rivals.
Oh, that's really unbelievable. He's crossing all the red lines one can imagine. He's incorrigible. It seems that all my prayers for him were in vain.
What we know from the Anonymous is that the King of Darkness held a meeting with the ambassador of Scythia and pressed the king to start an investigation into Don Jose and his son. He also brought back his already debunked theory that Scythia interfered in our last king's election.
Your Excellence, we obviously need to take very urgent actions. What are your thoughts about the extraordinary situation?
I think we have to immediately initiate an investigation into the King of Darkness for his criminal behavior. Let's meet tomorrow morning to plan on next steps.
Please send my congratulations to King Volodymyr on his great victory. He did a terrific job. It's a fantastic achievement.
Your Majesty, you're absolutely right. He did win big, and he worked hard for this. But I have to confess that he had the opportunity to learn from you, using some of your skills and knowledge as an example.
Well, it's very nice of him to say that. I will say that we do a lot for Scythia, much more than the other countries are doing, and they should be helping you more than they are. The Holy Roman Empire does almost nothing for you. When I was speaking to the Angel Queen, she talks Scythia, but she doesn't do anything. All they do is talk, and I think it's something that should really ask them about. Just a moment. I have to tweet that.
Yes, Your Majesty, you're absolutely right. Not only 100%, but actually 1000%. Our king did meet with the Angel Queen and Don Manuel the Grand, and he told them that they're not doing enough for Scythia. We would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. Especially, we are ready to buy more of your javelins that can break through the armor of Emperor Vladimir's knights.
I would like you to do us a favor, though. Because our country has been through a lot, and Scythia knows a lot about it. There are a lot of things that went on. I would like to have our Attorney General talk to your king or his people, and I would like your king to get to the bottom of it. As you saw yesterday, that whole nonsense ended with a very poor performance by a man named Don Roberto. An incompetent performance. But I say a lot of it started with Scythia. Whatever you can do, it's very important that you do it, if that's possible.
All this is very important to our king as well, and he wants to assure you that all the investigations will be done openly and candidly.
Good. Because I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and he was shut down, and that's really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that. The way they shut your very good prosecutor down, and you had some very bad people involved. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Don José's son. That Don José stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So, whatever you can do with our Attorney General will be great. Don José went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, sounds horrible to me.
Your Majesty, our king is well informed about this case. Given that now he has absolute control over the country, the new Prosecutor General will be 100% his person, and he will look into that issue. The investigation of this case is actually a question of restoring honesty and legality in our country.
Well, I will have Don Giuliani talk to your king, and I'm also going to have Attorney General talk to your king. And we will get to the bottom of it. Be sure of that. I'm sure you will figure it out. I heard the prosecutor was treated very badly, and he was a very fair prosecutor. So good luck with everything.
I want to assure you that we take this case very seriously, and we will conduct all necessary investigations. Your Majesty, I also wanted to thank you on behalf of our king for inviting him to visit Aragonica. He is very grateful for your support.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate that. Whenever your king would like to come to Aragonica, give us a date and we will work it out. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Congratulations on the fantastic job that he has done. The whole world is watching.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, today we are still short of 6 tweets.
And we can release the transcript of that absolutely perfect conversation. It's worth 1,000 tweets.
Besides, we have to discuss our next steps. First, we need to define the scope of our investigation and what the legal case is.
He's an evil person that must be removed from office. He's totally unfit for their position.
He's occupying the throne illegally, which rightfully belongs to Doña Hilaria.
He's a pathological liar. He lies all the time. He's lying even when he is telling the truth.
He sows discord in our lovely, wonderful, and harmonious society. He says awful things.
He is a misogynist, and he even dares to disrespect Saint Greta.
He is crazy, he has a terrible haircut, and he wants to send us back.
Doña Inez, that's your ice cream.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, dear. Why don't you bring ice cream for all? Oh.
All this is true, but I am afraid our ladies are a bit overly emotional. That, of course, is understandable, as the list of evil doings of the King of Darkness is endless. But my duty is to remind you of the constitutional setup of the Kingdom of Aragonica. Unfortunately, not liking that terrible king is not a reason enough for his dethroning. The only people allowed to dethrone the king, in case they don't like him, are the Council of Prince-Electors. This council convenes every 4 years. The Prince-Electors from all counties of our great country come to the capital, where they examine all candidates and elect the new king. Meanwhile, according to our constitution, only the Cortes of Aragonica has the power to investigate the king and potentially may issue a verdict and remove him from office. This can only happen if the king has committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
We already have the verdict.
What do you mean?
The verdict is already prepared. I can read it to you. We, the people of Aragonica, represented by the Cortes of the Kingdom of Aragonica, resolved that Don Donaldo, King of Aragonica, is dethroned for high crimes and misdemeanors. Don Donaldo, by his conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with the rule of law. King Don Donaldo thus warrants dethroning and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit in the Kingdom of Aragonica.
Okay, what are those above-mentioned high crimes and misdemeanors?
That's what this investigation has to determine.
His very existence is high crime and misdemeanor.
We prepared this verdict long before his election. And we were driven by the correct presumption that an evil person can only commit acts of crime. And it's just a matter of time before we discover them.
We already wanted to use this verdict last year, but Don Roberto could not properly fill the previous pages.
I am afraid we have quite a lot of work to do. if we want to be more successful than Don Roberto has been.
We should start immediately, taking the testimonies of anyone in possession of any knowledge regarding the criminal behavior of the King of Darkness. I recommend that the investigation be led by the Inquisition Committee of our Parliament. When we are ready with the results, we will send them to the Legal Crucifixion Committee, where the lawyers can prepare the final articles to be presented to our Cortes to initiate the dethroning procedures. We also propose engaging a couple of experienced intelligence community operatives with this investigation. We have to protect their identities, so I will only refer to them by their initials, DW and SH.
It's a very difficult case, sir.
Quite so, indeed. But that's why they hired us.
On the one hand, we can expect an evil person such as the King of Darkness to commit nothing but criminal acts. On the other hand, I do not really see a problem in his actions.
Many people hide and disguise their criminal activity under seemingly lawful actions. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort to unveil their true nature.
Let's analyze the facts. First of all, sir, the investigation for which Don Donaldo was pressuring the Scythians didn't actually materialize. Are we to investigate a crime that never happened?
Is an attempted murder a crime, my friend?
Yes, an attempted murder is a crime.
Is an attempted robbery a crime?
I will go out on a limb and say that yes, it is.
Is an attempted extortion and bribery a crime?
I get your point, sir. But where do you see an attempted extortion and bribery? Don Donaldo is asking the Scythians to conduct an investigation. It doesn't sound like a criminal request.
He is asking Scythians to dig dirt on Don Jose.
Excuse me, sir, but what is the meaning of an investigation? It's a process aiming to discover the truth. Did Don Jose and his son do anything wrong? I understand the outcome might be unpleasant for Don Jose, but is seeking the truth a criminal offense? Can seeking the truth be a reason for dethroning?
But what also matters in this case is the intent. Asking Scythia to conduct an investigation is not illegal. But this request is made with the criminal intent that such investigation would harm Don Jose, and therefore Don Donaldo is committing a crime.
Sir, you lost me. How could be doing something that's not illegal a crime?
You have to follow the latest trends in forensic science, my dear friend. Our colleagues from Scotland Yard just adopted a new policy of London's Metropolitan Police. These new rules specify that even if one does something entirely legal, it might be treated as a crime so long as someone else believes it is done with a bad intent.
Do you mean to say that if the Scythians find out that some wrongdoings of Don Jose or his son did happen in their country, this would destroy the reputation of Don Jose and he would lose the next year's elections against Don Donaldo? But if Don Jose did anything that can damage his reputation, that's his fault and not of Don Donaldo's.
Still, Don Donaldo committed a crime. You know that Aragonian law forbids state officials seeking election from receiving anything of value from a foreign country. If Don Jose did anything wrong, that's his fault. But by asking the Scythians to expose the wrongdoings of Don Jose, Don Donaldo broke the law, because he would have received something very valuable in exchange: the destruction of Don Jose's reputation. And receiving anything of value is an act of corruption.
So you tell me that asking foreign country officials to disclose the truth about the corrupt activities of a politician is an act of corruption?
Potentially, yes. Asking for the truth about certain politician is perfectly legal, unless you do not profit from that truth. If you're asking for the truth with the criminal intent to profit from that truth, you're committing a crime. And if you are the king and you personally benefit from that truth, it's a perfect case of a crime of corruption.
So you can ask for the truth only if it has no value. I get your point. I can say that King Joseph's inquisitors would be extremely jealous contemplating your deductive reasoning methods.
King Joseph? You mean the King of Georgia?
Yes, the father of all progressive humankind. But there is still a small hole in your theory, sir. When starting an investigation, it's impossible to foretell what its outcome would be. Everyone says Don Jose is a man of very high integrity, unable to commit crimes of corruption. Therefore, the investigation conducted by the Scythians cannot find any wrongdoings of Don Jose, and he will be completely exonerated. But such an outcome will actually help Don Jose and harm Don Donaldo. So why is then Don Donaldo asking for that investigation if it is to his disadvantage?
Difficult question. I have no idea. As you said, it's a very hard case.
Yes, sir, indeed.
Thousands of miles away from Aragonica were located the vast lands of one of the most powerful rulers in the world, the wicked and fearsome Vladimir the Terrible, Emperor of the Third Roman Empire, a state sometimes referred shortly as the Third Rome, but most popular under its German denomination, Drittes Römisches Reich. In other words, the Third Roman Reich. All supporters of Dona Hilaria strongly believed that Emperor Vladimir helped Don Donaldo usurp the throne of Aragonica, a claim both Emperor Vladimir and Don Donaldo vehemently denied, which proved the claim to be correct beyond any doubt. Next to the Third Roman Reich lived the people of the Scythians, whose country was called Scythia, and on whose throne just ascended the new King Volodymyr, also known as the Green King, former ruler of the small county numbered 95, young and naive fan of comedy plays and chivalric romances, staging battles against the evil under its incarnation in the form of windmills and fighting corruption disguised as chocolate factories.
Other characters of Scythian origin: Banjukovic, former king of Scythia, recognized by Emperor Vladimir as the legitimate king of corruption over that territory, dethroned and sent into exile by King Poroshen. Pan Shak, former chief inquisitor of Scythia, fighting crime with shocking methods, son of a bitch, or a very good guy who was shut down really unfair, depending on the quote. Baron Zloczynski, owner of the Korumpizma Company, former minister of King Banjukovic. His responsibilities included issuing gas drilling permits, mainly to his own company, mentioned above. After King Banjukovic's fall, Baron Zloczynski went into exile, probably because he was scared that he might face prosecution, and invited two distinguished natural gas experts to his company's board of directors. Pan Alexander, former king of Polonia and prominent democratic socialist, and El Experto, whose father started frequently traveling to Scythia to teach its people how to fight the corruption.
Your Majesty, you look very concerned. You used to be so joyful, but in the past months you completely lost your sense of humor and became so somber. Royal doctors say it's bad for your health.
I feel very tired of all negative comments. Too many people do not appreciate the efforts I am making for our country. On the top of that, we are in a very complicated situation right now. Don Donado of Ergonica is asking us to do him a favor, and I don't know how to react.
Is this favor, how you say, a kind of special service? I mean, something not very legal?
He insists that we start an investigation into the Corumpisma company, where the son of Don Jose used to work.
Well, it doesn't seem to be a very sinister request. Our law does not prohibit us from investigating companies in our own country. Why don't we just do this investigation and make him happy?
Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Doña Hilaria's supporters are very much against such an investigation. We should not upset them. They are our allies, helping us fight the Emperor of the Third Roman Empire.
Are Dona Hilaria's supporters worried about something? Did Don Jose's son do anything?
I would be extremely surprised if he did anything illegal.
I guess because he probably did nothing at all. Therefore, he did nothing wrong as well. He was just being paid 50,000 gold coins per month. But I assume receiving a certain amount of gold coins for doing nothing is not illegal, as long as someone is willing to give it to you.
Well, it depends. Sometimes the inquisitors who look into suspicious companies' dealings also receive certain amounts of gold coins in exchange of doing nothing. However, there is a very reasonable doubt that it might not be completely legal. But the key problem is that if we start such an investigation, it will bring to light the embarrassing question of why was Baron Zloczynski so much willing to pay El Experto 50,000 gold coins per month.
What is so embarrassing with that question?
Think about our former king for a moment. Can you do that?
Yes, I am thinking about him.
Think about the right-hand man of the king now.
Done.
Now imagine then during our former king's reign, the son of his right-hand man was on the board of directors of Corumpisma company, receiving quite good money and probably doing nothing.
It's not hard to imagine such a thing.
Now imagine that some Scythian inquisitor started an investigation into the company on whose board is the son of the king's right-hand man.
No, I cannot imagine something like that. Well, unless this inquisitor unexpectedly lost his mind.
You see, that's the point. And what if the inquisitor moves forward with this investigation anyway?
Then the king would surely fire him, at the very least.
Imagine now that on the board of the Corumpisma Company was not the son of our king's right-hand man, but the son of Don Jose, the Viceroy of Obamia.
I can also imagine that. It sounds pretty realistic.
Imagine now that a Scythian inquisitor is opening investigation into the company on whose board is the son of the very Viceroy of Obamia.
No, I cannot imagine something like that. Well, unless this inquisitor suddenly went crazy.
Do you get it now?
Now I do. It's amazing how perfidiously Baron Zloczynski invented all that.
That's really brilliant. And it's completely harmless for Don Jose's son, who is simply sitting on the board of directors of Corumpisma Company, probably doing nothing, while legally receiving money just in exchange for his very presence.
Okay, but I would disagree with the statement of doing nothing.
Why, Your Majesty? What is he doing? Receiving money?
Have you heard about the Great Chinese Wall?
Yes, sire. I have.
Is the Great Chinese Wall doing something?
What do you mean, Your Majesty?
What is the Great Chinese Wall doing?
Nothing. It's just standing there.
Very well. The Great Chinese Wall is just standing there. But it's doing something at the same time. Something of great value. It's protecting against all enemies. It's discouraging them. It's turning them back. The Don Jose's son and the last king of Polonia are also just standing there like the Great Chinese Wall. If any of our inquisitors came along looking to open an investigation into Corumpisma Company, what do you think their reaction would be when they saw this big wall of protection?
Our inquisitors are not fools. They can correctly interpret the message. Is there anybody who does not understand that the company, on the board of which is sitting Don Jose's son, should not be touched?
Do you understand now that Baron Zloczynski was not paying these gold coins for nothing? And why the people of Doña Hilaria are so strongly against such an investigation?
Your Majesty, perhaps the situation is not so bad. Did Don Donaldo put any pressure on you?
Pressure me? Nobody can pressure me. I'm not the loser. I am 42 years old, and I am the king of Scythia. Only my 6-year-old son can put pressure on me. Don Donaldo only asks politely if we can do him a favor.
Then why don't we also politely decline his request?
Let me ask you a question. If I ask you politely to do me a favor, what would you do? Would you do me the favor, or would you politely refuse?
Your Majesty, of course I would do the favor to you.
You see? Why then do you make these bizarre suggestions to decline his request?
Message! 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 Your Majesty, I am terribly sorry to interrupt you, but we found Don Donaldo's first letter in the archive.
Very good. What does it say?
He is congratulating you on your ascension to the throne, and he's saying that there are many things in Scythia that he likes.
Does he say what he likes more specifically?
He says Scythia is a great country and it has a lot of assets. He appreciates the Scythian women the most.
That goes without saying. What else?
In the second spot, he also likes Scythian women. In third, also the women. In short, he plays Scythian women on the first 10 spots.
I always knew our women are our best brand. Does he say anything about an investigation?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. But that's not all. There is more bad news.
Did anyone order prostitutes during a parliament session? Again?
No, no, no!
Don Donaldo also wants us to investigate the Scythian interference in Aragonica's previous king's election.
That's also a very sensitive and worrisome issue. We all remember the story with Count Malafort.
During our investigation of the former king Bandjukovich's Black Ledger, we discovered that he had been sending bags of gold coins to Count Malafort. We provided the Aragonican authorities information about these illegal dealings. As a result, Count Malafort was sentenced and he's now in jail. We were helping this way Dona Hilaria. For Don Donaldo, internal matters take priority over international ones, while Dona Hilaria is the kind of leader that pushes for the Aragonica's world hegemony, and that's better for us. Though, what Don Donaldo does is better for Aragonicans.
All our officials were convinced that Don Donaldo was Emperor Vladimir's friend and therefore our enemy. Remember when one of our ministers called Don Donaldo shameless and a dangerous marginal, while one of our ambassadors said in public that he is a clown, an even bigger danger for Aragonica than terrorism?
And you ask me why I look tired and concerned.
Your Majesty, don't be upset. You're used to pleasing everyone, but in your new position it's simply impossible. You have to choose a side.
You are right, but which side should I choose?
It's quite obvious. The right one.
The right one? But which side is the right one?
It's perfectly clear that Don Donaldo is on the right side. The supporters of Dona Hilaria are leaning too much to the left.
My advice would be to take Dona Hilaria's side. We cannot trust Don Donaldo. He's a friend of Emperor Vladimir.
You say Don Donaldo is a friend of Emperor Vladimir the Terrible. But when Emperor Vladimir invaded our country, and we asked the people of Dona Hilaria and Don Jose to help us, they gave us blankets. However, Don Donaldo delivered lethal weapons to us, supplying us with javelins.
Yes, Your Majesty. Much like you said, the situation is quite bad.
Actually, instead of getting worse, the situation is getting desperate. If we don't open an investigation into Don Jose and his son, Don Donaldo will not be happy, and he will not help us anymore. And then Emperor Vladimir will destroy us. If we start the investigation, then Dona Hilaria and her supporters will be very upset and will turn their back on us. And then again, Emperor Vladimir will destroy us.
I believe Emperor Vladimir already taught you the correct spelling of the word Zugzwang.
Your Majesty, you know very well, as one great man said, that the task of saving the drowning people is in the hands of the drowning people themselves.
Absolutely correct. I have a proposal with regard to that. Why don't we ask the authorities of Aragonica to advise us what to do? Let's write a letter to their Cortes, asking for proper guidance regarding this investigation.
Great idea. Let's write a draft.
Let's write, Dear representatives of the people of Aragonica.
Very good.
The Scythian authorities need your wise advice as to what kinds of investigations are acceptable to be conducted in Scythia.
Okay.
We kindly ask you for proper instructions in order to avoid unpleasant misunderstandings in the future.
Perfect.
Furthermore, it would be very useful if you could provide us with a list of people and companies that we are allowed to investigate, as well as of those that we are not.
Very good.
We also kindly ask you to explain to us what else we are allowed to do or not to do on the territory of our country.
Exactly.
We will fulfill the legitimate will of the people of Aragonica. Please accept our best regards, and so on and so forth.
Brilliant. Let's write the official letter. Please also call the court painter to capture the event.
На коня козак молодий, плаче молода дівчина, іде козак з України. Гей, 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 соколи, оминайте горі ліси доли. Дзвін, 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 дзвіночку, все повіжай, вороночку. Гей, 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 соколи, оминайте горі ліси доли. Місце повелі, дзвін, дзвін, дзвін.
Father, it seems that finally God has heard our prayers. The Cortes of Aragonica initiated a dethronement procedure against that horrible person, Don Donaldo.
Yes, sister. It seems the miraculous icon of Saint Greta really works. She is the only one who can drive the forces of evil away.
As I heard, the King of Darkness is asking the Scythian authorities to dig up some dirt on Don Jose and his son.
I'm afraid they will not have to dig very deep, sister.
What do you mean, Father? Neither Don Jose nor his son did anything wrong in Scythia.
Our high priests and priestesses are repeating that 24 hours a day. But do you think that there is nothing wrong in receiving 50,000 gold coins per month from that company?
Well, it probably raises some eyebrows, but many children of prominent people receive such amounts. The daughter of Doña Hilaria was also paid, at some point, 50,000 gold coins per month.
It's not the amount that is the problem, but who is paying it. The daughter of Doña Hilaria worked for our brothers from the Order of Inbicianians, while the son of Don Jose was paid by some people with very questionable backgrounds. I guess you have heard about a man named El Chapo?
Oh, yes. He is a famous lord of Aragonica and some neighboring countries.
So how would you feel if the daughter of Doña Hilaria was paid by a company connected to El Chapo? Imagine that one of El Chapo's lieutenants owned an entirely legal business in the country of Mayas. Let's say a powdered sugar production plant.
Father?
No, I mean a real powdered sugar production plant. And imagine this lieutenant of El Chapo's makes Don Donaldo's son a very attractive offer to get 50,000 gold coins, monthly salary, in exchange for doing almost nothing, just to be on the board.
Why would he want to have the son of Don Donaldo on his board of directors?
It could be prestige, but it could also be something more pragmatic. Do you think anyone in the country of Mayas would ever dare to look into any of the deals of a company on whose board sits the son of Don Donaldo?
Yes, go on.
And if the son of Don Donaldo would accept that offer, do you have any doubt that all high priests and priestesses of truth would be saying 25 hours a day that Don Donaldo works for the international drug cartels?
Yes.
Now, imagine that Don Donaldo openly bragged about his threats to withhold a 1 billion gold coin loan to the Mayan government. Money they desperately need unless they agreed to fire the top inquisitor because he was allegedly not doing his job well. And here is the twist. Imagine that this inquisitor claimed that he was fired because he was investigating the company with Don Donaldo's son on the board of directors. It's beyond my imagination to foresee the scale of the political storm that would break over the kingdom of Aragonica. So, please keep praying, sister, that the dethronement process goes well.
Por una cabeza de un noble potrillo que justo la ya llegar y quiere regresar para así decir: no olvides, hermano, pues sabes no hay que jugar. Por una cabeza me tejón de un día de cuella coqueta y risueña mujer que el jurar sonriendo el amor que está mintiendo quema una hoguera todo mi querer. Por una cabeza todas las locuras, su boca que pesa borra la tristeza, calma la amargura. Por una cabeza, si ella me olvida, ¿qué importa?
I have known Don Jose for 24 years, and the suggestion that he would be influenced in his duties by money for his son simply has no credibility to me. I know him as a man of integrity and dedication to our country.
Dad, what does integrity mean?
Integrity? It means to be honest and to have strong moral principles.
Like Don Jose from the play, Shadows from the Past, that we watched last week.
Dear Don Jose, with great sadness, I have to say, we were very upset by your statements condemning our measures against the so-called dissidents. These are some very bad people that do not believe in our great ideals and in the bright future of our country, and are trying to hinder and sabotage our way forward by all means. They are driven only by hate for everything progressive and by resentment towards our great achievements. Of course, we need to take certain measures to protect the rest of our society from their criminal activities.
Gentlemen, don't worry. My official position on that subject is just a show for the public of Aragonica. You see, I have to demonstrate that I care for human rights, express support for these people, and condemn the way you are treating them. But don't take it seriously. We don't really care about the fate of the so-called dissidents.
Let's hear the public servant. Well, did the Corn Pisma Company ever engage in, any public efforts to rehabilitate their image?
Yes.
And what were those?
One of the ways they did that was to appoint Westerners to their board.
Corporate governance experts?
Westerners.
But not corporate governance experts.
I don't know what the one member's backgrounds, and I've served my entire life in government service, so I'm not familiar with corporate boards.
Do you know who they appointed to their board?
The big name was Pan Alexander, the former king of Polonia.
And why was he appointed to the board?
I don't know. I've never met Mr. Zaczynski, and I don't know what they did and why they did it.
Anybody else that you recall appointed to the board?
It's become public knowledge that the son of Don Jose was appointed to the board.
Did Don Jose's son have any experience in the natural gas business?
I don't know.
Okay. So you don't know if he spoke any of the relevant languages?
I don't know.
Oh, one more question, please. Any idea why they wanted to name him to the board?
Again, I've never had a conversation with Mr. Zaczynski, and I don't know.
But probably the son of Don Jose. He was appointed on the board because his dad was Don Jose.
That's a question for Zaczynski, and I think that's how people interpreted it.
That's a reasonable interpretation, right?
As I said, I've never had a conversation with Mr. Zaczynski.
And if Don Donaldo asked you to investigate Don Jose, would you have considered it an unlawful act?
I don't know that it's unlawful,
per se, but I think again that there are channels for conducting proper investigations, and that would have been the best way to handle something like this.
But certainly it would be. It's bizarre for our king to ask that some Aragonican be investigated by another government.
It's very unusual.
Dad, what does bizarre mean?
Do you remember when you wanted to dye your hair in blue color last month? Well, that would be bizarre.
Does Don Donaldo want to dye his hair in a blue color?
No, he prefers another one.
Is it a bizarre color?
Perhaps not, but maybe a bit unusual.
And that's why they want to dethrone him.
Watch the play, sweetheart, and stop asking bizarre questions.
I know that the members of this committee frequently bring these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously in regards to the requesting meeting between Don Donaldo and the King of Scythia, the answer is yes.
And you've also testified it became your clear understanding that the military assistance was also being withheld pending Scythian King Volodymyr announcing these investigations, correct?
That was my presumption, my personal presumption based on the facts at the time.
So, is this kind of a 2 + 2 = 4 conclusion that you've reached?
Pretty much.
It is the only logical conclusion to you that, given all of these factors, that the aid was also a part of this quid pro quo?
Yep. Don Donaldo never told me directly that the aid was conditioned on the investigations. The only thing we got directly from Don Giuliani was that the corrumpisme and private selections investigations were conditioned on the meeting. It was my own personal guess, based again on your analogy. 2 + 2 = 4.
Dad, what does quid pro quo mean?
It's a Latin expression, and it means something for something or a favor for favor. If you're a good girl and you do what you're told, you get a candy. That's quid pro quo.
Like what Don Jose did in the play we watched last week.
I was on a visit in Scythia, and I was supposed to announce that there's another 1 billion gold coins loan guarantee from our country to Scythia. And I got commitment from King Poroshen and his prime minister that they will take action against the state prosecutor Pan Shock, and they did not. Then I said, I will not give you that 1 billion gold coins. They said, you don't have that authority. We talked with the king of Aragonica and he agreed to give us that money. I told them, talk to him then. But I am telling you that you will not get that money. So listen, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired by then, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch, he got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Did you hear the news, Your Excellence? It's unbelievable. The King of Darkness is calling our investigation a lynching. He dares to use this word and even dares to talk about his victimization.
He compares a constitutionally sanctioned inquiry to a lynching. That's a historically ignorant statement. Our investigation is not a lynching. It is part of our Constitution. Our country has a dark, shameful history of lynching, and to even think about making this comparison is abhorrent. It's despicable. He is also calling our investigation a witch hunt and a coup intended to take away the power of the people, their vote, and their freedoms. He pretended we are trying to cancel the previous king's election results. Really?
In pushing that process, in pushing the arguments of fairness and due process, the enemies of our king so far have been running a lynch mob. It is a partisan witch hunt done very wrong and very unfairly. It is the most divisive thing in our country in the last 30 years. You get a large segment of the Aragonican population saying you have staged a coup d'etat. You overthrew the election unfairly. The other part of the Aragonican people say, no, we didn't.
Dad, I'm very confused. Why is Don Jeremias defending Don Donaldo?
No, he's not defending Don Donaldo. These are the words from his speech 20 years ago in defense of Don Guillermo.
If the king should be dethroned, history is going to question whether or not this was just a partisan lynching or whether or not it was something that in fact met the standard, the very high bar that was set by the founders as to what constituted an offense requiring dethronement.
Dad, why are there so many sick people in the Cortes of Aragonica?
What do you mean, sweetie?
What is the name of this sickness when you have a loss of memory?
Oh, it's called amnesia.
Is that what my grandma has?
No. She has Alzheimer's disease, sweetie.
Like my granddaddy?
No, he had dementia.
All those people, what do they have?
Sweetie, they simply have a selective amnesia.
What's that?
That's when you have holes in your memory and you remember only what you want to remember. It's a very common disease among politicians.
So I was right. There are a lot of sick people in the Cortes of Aragonica.
Yes, sweetie, women are always right.
The office of the Great Inquisitor correctly decided not to engage any witnesses from Scythia and did not request any documents from the Scythian authorities. It was clear that no one in Scythia would have any information about the evil doings of the King of Darkness, and the Scythian inquisitors were in possession of only a few 100,000 pages of documentation regarding the dealings of the Corumpisma company. Such an insignificant amount of data was not even worth a look. The clerks of the Great Inquisitor had to instead record.
Who heard anything the King of Darkness says? Who heard anything and anyone else heard the King of Darkness was saying? Who heard anything anyone said that someone heard? The King of Darkness said. What perception anyone had? What did everyone assume that what King of Darkness had in mind? What arithmetic calculations everyone did. And everything else that the mind exposed the evil intentions and the criminal actions of Donaldo.
The defenders of the King of Darkness were making incredible efforts to hide his crimes, unleashing a torrent of lies. They had serious reasons to do so. The king issued a warning that everyone who was not defending him actively enough will have their head on a pike. But the mountain of evidence against Don Donaldo kept growing and growing. The victory of truth was approaching.
The Cortes of Aragonica did a thorough investigation of all facts and came to the conclusion that Don Donaldo committed several high crimes and misdemeanors. Therefore, we're proposing the following resolution.
Our Constitution provides that the Cortes of Aragonica shall have the sole power of dethroning, and that the king shall be removed from office if he committed treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct as King of Aragonica, Don Donaldo has abused his powers in that. Using the powers of his high office, Don Donaldo solicited the interference of a foreign country, Scythia, in the next year's election of the new King of Aragonica, urging the authorities of Scythia to publicly announce investigations that would influence the next year's election to his advantage. Don Donaldo corruptly solicited the government of Scythia to publicly announce investigations into a political opponent, Don Jose, former Viceroy of Obamia, and a discredited theory that Scythia interfered in the previous king's election in Aragonica. With the same corrupt motives, Don Donaldo conditioned 2 official acts on the public announcements that he had requested: the release of 400 million gold coins of vital military assistance to Scythia to oppose the aggression of the Third Roman Empire, and a head of state meeting in Casablanca, which the King of Scythia sought to demonstrate continued Aragonican support. Faced with the public revelation of his actions, Don Donaldo ultimately released the military assistance to Scythia, but has persisted in openly and corruptly urging and soliciting Scythia to undertake investigations for his personal political benefit.
It was a very strange investigation, my dear friend. Think about what the initial point was. They knew Don Donaldo was asking Scythia to start investigations. And after hundreds of hours of testimonials and thousands of pages of transcripts, what was the outcome? They proved that Don Donaldo asked Scythia to start investigations. It was more or less the only result. But it was very clear since the beginning. He was not denying that. He was publicly speaking about it. What was the reason for all that effort?
But at least they figured out that Don Donaldo was pressuring Scythia to start the investigations.
Well, it is, let's say, in the category of a very highly likely. But even if we assume that he was pressuring Scythians, it's not a problem, per se. In principle, there is nothing wrong with pressuring a foreign country to do something. It depends for what you are asking them. If he was threatening to withhold the military aid for Scythia, unless they stop using coal for heating and start paying their female soccer players the same salaries as their male soccer players, I seriously doubt that this would be pointed out as a reason for dethroning.
The above-mentioned actions of Don Donaldo are an obvious abuse of power and ultimate acts of corruption for the following reasons. Anyone asking for an investigation into the corruption of any corrupt politician is committing a criminal offense because such an investigation would destroy the reputation of said corrupt politician and would help his political opponents. Should the king be requesting an investigation into the corruption of any of his opponents, and should such an investigation confirm that an opponent has indeed committed crimes of corruption, then that would be an ultimate act of corruption by the king himself, because he triggered an investigation that damaged the reputation of one of his opponents, and that was to the benefit of the king himself. Therefore, in such case, the king is committing high crime and misdemeanor and should be removed from office. The above arguments are exposing one potential case for conviction of Don Donaldo for corruption. Of course, we need to strongly emphasize that we are not denying the sovereign right of the Kingdom of Scythia to conduct its own investigations. There are no companies that are untouchable. There is no list of persons that cannot be prosecuted. Such a list did not exist, does not exist, and will never exist, because nobody is above the law. Of course, this is also true for Don Jose. But as it's well known, Don Jose is a man of very high integrity, not capable of committing any corruption offenses. Therefore, it is not possible that a Scythian investigation could come to a conclusion that Don Jose committed a crime. This was the most perfidious part of Don Donaldo's criminal plan. The hidden criminal intention of Don Donaldo's for extorting the Scythian authorities to investigate Don Jose was to undermine Don Donaldo's own position in the upcoming election and bolster that of Don Jose's.
It is obvious that by being cleared by the Scythian investigation from false accusations of corruption, the position of Don Jose would become extremely strong, and he would be elected as the next King of Aragonica. Then, Don Donaldo could claim the election of Don Jose to be declared null and void, as it was obtained with the help of foreign countries' intervention in our election process. The laws of Aragonica forbid candidates for state office to receive anything of value from a foreign country. If Don Jose is cleared by Scythian authorities of any wrongdoing, it would be something of very high value that he would receive from a foreign country. Therefore, his election would be illegal, and Don Donaldo could continue ruling over the kingdom of Aragonica.
Sir, you are a genius. How did you manage to discover this insidious plan?
Elementary, my dear Watson. I knew the answer was in the old books, and it's what I was searching for all the time during our investigation. Finally, I found it in a pile of old papers in the attic. A sheet from an ancient Inquisition instruction manual from the time of King Joseph. It was saying, it doesn't matter if a person is good or bad. One can always find the right text in the penal code.
Holmes, I'm strongly convinced that all of King Joseph's inquisitors would flip out of jealousy if they could see your legal construct in this case.
On the ground of all mentioned above, we, the people of Aragonica, represented by the Cortes of the Kingdom of Aragonica, resolve that Don Donaldo, by his conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with the rule of law. King Don Donaldo thus warrants dethroning and trial, removal from office, and disqualification. To hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit in the kingdom of Aragonica. Despite Don Donaldo's best efforts to hide his crimes, truth always comes to light. Today's verdict is a victory for the truth. It is a crushing victory of the truth over the facts.
The good wins. The good always prevails. The dark side of the Force is destroyed. The play has a happy end, as required by all Hollywood standards. The entire universe is illuminated by the good. It's beautiful. It is impressive, it's dazzling. The good shines so incredibly bright.
But it is so bright that most people cannot look at it.
Still, the good keeps shining.
It's so overwhelmingly bright that nobody can take it anymore.
But the good keeps shining.
People begin to go blind.
Yet the good keeps shining.
More and more people go blind.
But the good keeps shining.
Now everyone is blind, and everything falls into darkness. But most importantly, the production of this movie was a result of a corrupt quid pro quo deal between the translator of the Latin manuscript and the forces of darkness. The translator was threatened that his personal Mar-a-Lago discount card would be revoked if he did not deliver. Since the card offers a 500% discount for that resort, everybody would agree that it's a serious threat. For those facing difficulties with the mathematics, let's provide a short explanation. If the cost of one night at Mar-a-Lago is 400 gold bitcoins, a 100% discount means you pay nothing. The other 400% discount means you get paid 4 times the price for each night you spend there, which equals 1,600 gold bitcoins per night, or roughly 50,000 gold bitcoins per month. You only have to sit on a wooden board on the shore of the ocean, and that's what you get paid for. Almost like sitting on some other boards of directors in some other places.